So you're thinking of moving to Atlanta, Georgia, or maybe you have to move to Atlanta for work or family, but you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. There is so much conflicting information online about what it's like to live here. So I thought it would be really helpful to go through my 10 most commonly asked questions of people that I help relocate here and sort of create an ultimate guide to living in Atlanta, Georgia. So let's get into it. But first, thank you so much for watching the channel. My only goal with this channel is to provide you value so you can make great decisions for yourself or your family. And if you ever need to buy or sell a home anywhere in the Atlanta area, we would love to be your agency of choice. Use the link in the description below to book a Zoom call with me personally, or send me an email at the below email address. We love connecting with our viewers. So I am gonna rip right through the 10 most common questions I get from people relocating to the Atlanta area, starting with, where should I live in Atlanta? And this is actually a good question because it's one of the most difficult to figure out. So here's the framework for how we narrow this down. First of all, everyone needs a certain size home and they have a certain budget. And because that budget is only going to go so far in certain areas, right off the bat, we're probably narrowing it down quite a bit. Next would be commute. This could be work, family, or an amenity that you have to be close by to. Traffic in the Atlanta area is not great, so you're going to want to make sure you're a specific distance from whatever that amenity is. And if you're a remote worker who can't think of anything they want to be close by to, that's great because it provides flexibility, but also a little bit more difficult to narrow it down. So the last way we narrow this down is lifestyle. And I would break lifestyle down into density, amenity, and community. So for density, some people want to live in the heart of the city. They want an atmosphere like Midtown, where it's as dense as possible. They're around a lot of people and a lot of things to do. Other people never ever want to see their neighbors at all. They want to be rural, outside of Atlanta, on a big plot of land, maybe with some animals, but they don't want to see people. So that's going to cut a lot of places off the list. And of course, many people fall in between where they want suburban lifestyle that is close to things, but also a little bit quiet. Second would be amenities. What kind of things do you have to have quick access to? For a lot of people, that's a TJ Maxx and a Target. For others, it's a lake or a river. And for some, it's where their favorite sports team plays. So you'll want to take some time to think about what kind of amenities do you want to have easy access to around where you live. And lastly, community. Do you want to feel connected to a community of other families raising their children? You may want to look at one of the popular swim tennis communities in the suburbs of Atlanta. Do you want a community with young, progressive, single people all around? You may want to look at some of the in-town neighborhoods, like a East Atlanta Village, for instance. And for many of my clients, they want a community where there's a lot of other people that look like them. So, size, budget, commute is going to narrow it down quite a bit, and then after that, you want to narrow down lifestyle, amenity, density, and community. And for the majority of my clients who aren't as familiar with Atlanta, I'm always going to recommend a discovery trip where you come into town, spend a weekend driving around to a bunch of different areas to really get a feel for what will work or may not work for your lifestyle. Number two, what kind of jobs are available in Atlanta? This is one of the biggest reasons people move here because of our economy. After all, there are 35 Fortune 1000 companies headquartered in Atlanta, and 19 of those are actually in the Fortune 500. Let's go through some of the most popular industries here. So we've got IT with Google, Microsoft, and Apple opening up campuses recently in the Atlanta area. A lot of tech is being driven here by all the diverse tech talent we have produced through our historically black colleges and universities. TV and film. You've probably heard there are years where more productions are completed in Georgia than in California. And we have big new studios like Trilith, which is south of Atlanta, that is creating a lot of jobs. So if you're in this industry, this is one of the best places for opportunity. You're gonna have corporate jobs of all different kinds at some of the major players I mentioned before: Delta, Coke, UPS, Home Depot, NCR, and Norfolk Southern, just to name a few. A lot of my clients move here to work in the healthcare industry. We've got the CDC, Emory University, and a ton of high-quality hospitals spread all throughout Metro Atlanta, including one particular cluster which is referred to as Pill Hill in the Sandy Springs area. And this is where a lot of people who work in this industry look to be nearby. And finance. Did you know the Fed actually has a district headquarters in the Atlanta area? We've also got major players like Truist, Bank of America, and Equifax. So those are the major industries that people move here to work in, but I certainly didn't name them all. Atlanta's diverse economy and number of businesses in the Fortune 1000 is one of the reasons I'm so bullish on future growth here. But what about affordable homes? Is it still affordable to live in Atlanta? Now, of course, affordable is an extremely subjective term. And for those who have lived here for, let's say, 5 or more years, they'll point out that it has gotten a lot less affordable in that time. However, compared to similar sized metros, we are still very affordable. So let's try to break this down a little bit. Right off the bat, let's cut out 600K or plus. So that budget is going to do different things in different areas, but I would say generally speaking, 600 plus is going to get you access, so to speak, to pretty much any neighborhood in the Atlanta area. That will range in terms of size and finish, but you're doing pretty good at 600 or above pretty much anywhere in Atlanta. But what about $400,000 or less? Well, first of all, if you're open to an attached option, obviously you're gonna have way more options to choose from, especially if you don't need a lot of space. Even today, in some of the swankiest neighborhoods around Atlanta, let's say a Buckhead or a Midtown, you can purchase a condo or townhome under $300,000. Now keep in mind, it'll be small, probably won't be renovated, and the HOA fees can get quite high. But if you don't need a lot of space and you're open to an attached option, I would say there's still a lot of great affordability in Atlanta. But what about detached under 400K? I'm gonna give you some quick and dirty options here. First off, if you're looking in town, inside the perimeter, many areas to the north you may be priced out of because they're already very expensive and desirable. So the 3 main places I typically help clients who are looking inside the perimeter at this price point would be on the west side somewhere, ideally somewhere around the Beltline. On the south side, maybe in the Tri-Cities around the airport, which you probably heard me talk a lot about, or on the east side. As you head east in Atlanta, things get more sprawled out, there's more brick ranches, and you can find a nice parcel that's further away from your neighbor for under $400,000 still. Now, if we're talking suburbs, this is going to be more difficult, particularly if you need to be in an area with a reputation of good public schools. So again, this is going to be most difficult to do north of the perimeter. If we're looking in other directions, we can look to the west to an area like Mableton if you still need to commute in town, or maybe further out, Dallas or Powder Springs if you don't care about being close to the city. If we're looking to the south, you may want to consider a Fairburn where your budget is still going to do pretty good there. And if you're looking to the east, maybe you check out a Stone Mountain or a Conyers or even a Covington if you're willing to go that far east. So yes, there are definitely still affordable homes in the Atlanta area. It's just really going to come down to how much space you need, are you willing to live in an attached option, and how close do you really need to be to the city. At number 4, I have walkable neighborhoods. Where are the walkable neighborhoods? Unless you want to live in the middle of the nowhere, my people who want to be in town or in the suburbs want to have a walkable neighborhood at least close by. Now, as you know by now from watching my videos, I'm sure, we are not a dense city. We're sprawled out, and you pretty much need to own a car to get around here. But let's start with in town. Number 1, the most dense neighborhood in town is going to be Midtown. It's the only area that even slightly resembles a New York City, and one of the only areas I can think of in town where you could legitimately get by without owning a car. The other thing you really want to be aware of if walkability is important to you is the Atlanta Beltline, which I've talked a lot about before, but if walkability is important, you want to be in a Beltline neighborhood, somewhere where you can walk or short drive to the Beltline. And this is just simply a loop around the core of the city, an old railway corridor that has been ripped up and paved over. So you can now walk, bike, scooter 2 different neighborhoods around the core of the city. And so even if the neighborhood that you live in is not particularly walkable, if you can easily access the Beltline, you can easily access some of the most walkable neighborhoods in Atlanta. And the third in-town location I would be aware of is the city of Decatur. Now, I love this area for a lot of different reasons, but it has one of the best, most walkable kind of downtown areas, but this is inside the perimeter. It's technically a suburb, but it's very much city living. So that is another area I would definitely have on your radar if walkability is important to you. Now, if you want to live outside the perimeter, you want to be in the suburbs, you're really going to be choosing from you know, which downtown area do you want to be close to the most? So I'm just going to highlight some of the most popular, most well-regarded downtown areas in the Atlanta suburbs. So you got to have Alpharetta on your radar. That's why it's so desirable and popular and getting expensive, because not only is downtown Alpharetta great, but you've got Avalon, which is connected to downtown Alpharetta. So right there, you've got about as much walkability and amenities as you could want. Woodstock, which is definitely further out to the northwest, has a reputation of having one of the best downtown areas in all Metro Atlanta. Sandy Springs is a suburb that I would make you aware of, not only because it does have a nice downtown area, but because it's one of the few suburbs with MARTA connectivity. So you could take heavy rail from your neighborhood in Sandy Springs in town to a midtown, or if you've got to go to the airport, right down to the airport, which creates less dependence on a car and would be great for someone concerned about walkability. And the last one I would mention, just to mix it up, to the south would be Peachtree City. Really nice, affluent, family-friendly area south of the city. It is a golf cart community, which is part of the reason why I mention it. So that is an area that if you live there, I guess that's not walking, but it's not being in a car, right? So that is an area I like to mention for people who are looking for less car dependence. At number 5, I have schools, right? You're moving here, you've got kids, they've got to get a great education. And this is one of the most challenging conversations I have with clients, simply because, all right, you're doing research, you go online, you type in XYZ school, Niche.com says it's a 9 out of 10. Looks pretty good, but hold on a second. I'm on greatschools.com and it's got a 6 out of 10. What's going on there? Listen, there are so many third-party websites, and each of them has their own little special algorithm they created to create a grade for a school. I think it's really important to understand that you should not base your entire decision of where you're going to live off a number from one of these aggregator websites. Now, there is a website that I love that I talk about here a lot, which is schoolreports.georgia.gov. This is an actual state of Georgia official website. So I think there's less bias there and there's more transparency. You can see exactly how they arrive at their conclusions. You can look up things like test scores, student to teacher ratio, demographics, and they do give grades for each district and school. Now, another great resource for this, and this may seem kind of weird if you've never spent time on these websites, but really are online forums when you can interact with people who are raising kids in these areas. So 2 of those forums would be Reddit, and Atlanta has a Reddit page, but a lot of the Atlanta suburbs have Reddit pages. So if you're doing this search, you're looking at schools, maybe you've got one in particular, if you just add Reddit to your search phrase in Google, you're likely to come up with some options that show you conversations of parents that have kids in these schools, and you can get real feedback and ask questions yourself. Another one would be citydata.com. And again, you have people who raise kids in these areas commenting on what it was like. So obviously you're going to get conflicting information there, but I like this so much more than the aggregator sites like a niche.com, because it's a real person offering real circumstances that they went through. Now, I don't want to leave you with no kind of quick and dirty information here. So generally speaking, let's talk about the counties that are highly regarded in terms of public schools, and then I'm going to touch on 3 specific areas. So in no particular order, but when I think of Metro Atlanta and the best public school systems, you're going to hear a lot of common things, you're going to read a lot of common things, and it's going to be Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Forsyth County, North Fulton, and Fayette County. Those are the most common ones with probably the best reputation for public schools. Now, there's 3 I want to touch on real quick, which are areas that are most commonly identified by clients who really care about the quality of the schools. That would be East Cobb, which I've done videos on, you've heard me talk about. Incredible reputation for rigorous school programs, Walton, Pope, and Lassiter in particular. Another great thing about East Cobb is this is suburban living with pretty convenient access to the city. So if you're a parent commuting into the city, but you need suburbs where your kids get a great education, that's why East Cobb is so popular. The other would be North Gwinnett, in particular the Sewanee-Buford area. Fantastic reputation for schools in Gwinnett County in this area, in particular STEM-focused schools and schools that provide resources for special needs kids and at-risk youth. So if any of those things are a priority for you, I highly recommend you do some research into Gwinnett County, in particular, North Gwinnett County. And because I don't want you to think there's no good schools inside the perimeter, I want to touch on City of Decatur again. Not only is it one of the nicest, most walkable areas, but has a fantastic reputation for high quality public schools. Now, don't get confused when you see a Decatur address. It does not necessarily mean City of Decatur, okay? It probably means unincorporated DeKalb County. One of the quickest, easiest methods is that City of Decatur address is going to have 3 numbers, whereas unincorporated DeKalb would have 4 numbers. But City of Decatur, if you want to be inside the perimeter, but you need your kids to get a great education, that's one of the first places I'd recommend you look. At number 6, I have things to do. What can you do when you live here? And honestly, I've had some people say Atlanta is boring, there's nothing to do, and I kind of get that. It doesn't really have a distinct flavor like some other cities, like maybe a New Orleans, San Francisco, New York, LA, Chicago. Those have really distinct vibes and experiences when you get there, and really distinct things to do. But if your hobbies are nature related, like hiking, camping, canoe or kayaking, or even just sitting in a park and doing absolutely nothing, then Atlanta has plenty of things for you to do. This is really a nature lover's paradise. After all, we are a city in a forest. So you don't have to go far to experience incredible nature. The other big one I would say is festivals. If you're a festival goer, if you like concerts or whatever kind of convention is coming up, you just like to be in large crowds, which honestly is the opposite of what I like. We have great festivals here. I talked about things that I love. I can't even name them all, to be honest. Music Midtown, Pride, the Jazz Festival, Peachtree Road Race, Shaky Knees, Shaky Beats, Comic Con. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you like festivals, you are not going to run out of things to do in the Atlanta area. So if I had to break it down to its essence in terms of things to do, it would be nature and festivals. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a major city, okay? We've got all the city experiences that you could want. We've got the major sports teams. We've got great museums. We've got the best aquarium in the country. We've got incredible bars. And although I'm pretty critical of the food scene here, we do have great restaurants. I've also been told we're known for our great strip clubs, though I cannot confirm that for you. But the point is, any of the typical things that you'd be able to do in any big city, you're gonna find here in Atlanta. You're not gonna struggle for a date night or just a fun thing to do on the weekend. But especially if you're a fan of nature-related activities or festivals, you're gonna love living in Atlanta. At number 7, I have weather, and honestly, I think this is one of the most underrated things about living in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, sure, it's not sunny and 70 like it is in Southern California throughout the year, but a lot of people don't want that. If you're like me, I enjoy 4 distinct seasons. However, I didn't enjoy it so much when I lived in the Northeast, right? Those are 4 very hardcore distinct seasons. It's freezing in the winter, it's hot and humid in the summer, and Metro Atlanta is much more mild, okay? Now, yes, the summer can be brutal. It gets crazy humid and crazy hot. But honestly, after 15 years, my blood has gotten thin. I actually like the really warm weather. And as far as winter goes, I can tell you if you're from the Northeast or you're from the Midwest, the winter is going to be a joke to you. It hardly ever snows. We're maybe good for 1 or 2 flurries a year. And generally speaking, winter is just kind of cold, like 40s, and kind of rainy. Kind of rains throughout the winter, and it's really over before you know it. Spring and fall are absolutely to die for. Sunny, breezy, 60s and 70s. Trees all around you. I mean, I absolutely love it. So if you like 4 distinct seasons, but you don't like really hardcore extreme swings, I think weather is one of the best things about living here. Not to mention, we really have no natural disasters, which I get asked a lot about from people coming from California or other areas they experience that. And yes, technically we've had some in the past, but in terms of everyday lifestyle, you're not going to have to worry about that here. At number 8, I have crime. Now again, you're doing your research online, and I hope you haven't gotten too scared, because if you do believe everything you read online, you would never want to move to Atlanta, right? I mean, especially when people are just commenting on posts about Atlanta, it makes it seem like it's a war zone. And the reality is that is not the case. In fact, statistically, crime has been on a steady decrease in the Atlanta area for the last 15 years. And Atlanta is not even in the top 20 of the most violent cities in America. Now, of course, this is going to vary quite a bit depending on what neighborhood you're looking at, but let's give you some resources. Fortunately, APD, Atlanta Police Department, has an open data portal where you can literally visually see the representation of all the statistics they put in there. So you can look up a Reynoldstown or a Grant Park or a College Park, and you can see what are the crime statistics for the last year, 2 years, 10 years. What was the crime there that month? What kind of crime was it, right? So this is some resources to really give you a better picture. Now, obviously, this is something that's going to be on your radar more so if you're living right in the heart of the city, especially maybe you're on a lower budget and you're okay with being in one of these areas that's gentrifying on the west side or in the south side of Atlanta. Now, I would personally feel safe in living in most of those areas, but that's going to come down to your tolerance for city living. It's also going to come down to the actual street, right? Things change rapidly street to street here, so you really got to make sure you have someone guiding you who knows these areas well. I would say if we're talking about the suburbs, I mean, sure, crime obviously does happen in suburban areas, but you know, I think in many of the areas, especially the areas where we talk about with high quality public schools, most of these areas are going to have their own police departments that are very involved, well funded, and although anything can happen anywhere, I can't really think of any suburban areas that you're just going to want to flat out cross off your list. At number 9, I have diversity, and this is again one of the most common things that people ask me about. Am I going to feel safe, comfortable, accepted in this area? And unfortunately, especially for people who have never been to Georgia or the South in general, they only know a lot of the stereotype, right? They think of Confederate flags and racism and just being unwelcoming to people of all different types of diversity. But the reality is Atlanta as a city and many parts of Metro Atlanta are incredibly diverse. The city itself is majority black, and even when we look at the suburbs, take Gwinnett County for instance, it's the 5th most diverse county in the country. So, can anything happen anywhere? Unfortunately, yes. May you see some Confederate flags? Yeah, at some point you're probably going to. Are you going to be harassed or unwelcomed or told to get out? Anywhere within an hour, 15, hour and a half of Atlanta, that would really surprise me. Now, of course, there are areas that are more homogenous than other areas, but personally, you know, 15 years plus living here, over 6 years helping people relocate here, all the conversations and the stories, there have been one-offs, there have been uncomfortable situations, but there's not been any consistent theme of feeling unwelcomed because of your race or religion or whatever other thing you want to put into the category of diversity. There is a lot of diversity in the South, in the Atlanta area in particular. So if you're concerned that you may not want to move here because you won't feel accepted, I would probably encourage you to revisit that. I'd be surprised if that was the case. And number 10, the most common question I get about living in Atlanta is, what is the market like? You're gonna buy a home and you're wondering, is it still crazy? Am I gonna have to offer $1 million above asking? Am I, is there gonna be multiple offers? How quick do homes go? How long do they stay on the market? So let's break that down for you real quick right now. And this is about as boots on the ground information as you're gonna get, because I'm literally in the trenches, so to speak, trying to get my buyers under contract, and I have listings at the same time. So I'll tell you exactly what's happening. I just had a listing in the Roswell area over the weekend. We had a bunch of showings. We got 5 offers, and we did go under contract in the first weekend above asking. I was also helping a buyer and put an offer in on their behalf, and we came in second. It was not accepted. I also have a few buyers that I'm helping currently, and one of them over the weekend, we saw a place and put an offer in on. It had just been listed on the market a few days ago, and our offer was not accepted, okay? We got beaten out by someone who was able to offer better terms. So even with interest rates in the mid 6s, the market is pretty hot. There is simply still more demand than there is supply. Now, the good news is that it's nowhere near what it was like in 2021 or early 2022, okay? When interest rates were 3 and below 3%, I can tell you as someone who's helped a lot of buyers, it was incredibly stressful. All right, trust me, you do not want that to happen again. But the double-edged sword of that is that when interest rates come down, prices shoot way up, and the market is flooded with new buyers who can now afford a home at that low interest rate. So even though the higher interest rates are cutting into buyers' purchasing power, I do not want them to go down too quickly, okay? Right now, it's fairly balanced, okay? The buying situation does not have to be stressful. We're getting most of our clients under contract on the first offer or at most the third, which is pretty normal. For sellers, as long as you're willing to get your place in good shape and list at a reasonable price, your home is not going to stay on the market very long. So my advice to you, if you're thinking about timing the market, whether you're looking for rates to drop or prices to drop or, you know, for it to be less competitive, listen. That is a fool's errand. Let your life situation dictate what you're going to do and buy what you can afford as soon as you possibly can. You can buy at a higher interest rate, and yeah, you might not buy quite as big of a house as you did if it was under 3%, but guess what? When rates come back down, you can refinance and you're going to be in a great financial situation. And if you are looking a year out, a year and a half, 2 years out, okay, not meant to discourage you, but just be prepared. If rates come down, they continue to come down, if they're in the low 5s, and certainly if they're in the 4s, prices are going to go up. It's going to be very competitive in this market. So it's really important to be working with a team that knows how to write up a winning offer and get you under contract. But more than anything else, I would just encourage you to just do whatever's best for your life situation. Don't try to get too cute about when you're gonna buy and when you're gonna strategize this or strategize that. Buy real estate as soon as you can, as long as it's well within your budget. So there you have it, 10 of the most commonly asked questions I get when helping people to relocate to Atlanta. Hopefully you have a much better idea of what it's like to live in Atlanta, Georgia. Really hope that provided you some value and some context. If you want to continue this conversation, you can speak directly to me by booking a call using the Zoom link in the description below. You can send me an email at info@livinginatlantateam.com. I love it when my viewers become clients. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.